Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where we're going to discuss the end of season proceedings, so to speak. So we'll discuss the unfortunate Ravens loss 24-17 in Cincinnati, and also the press conference that was held today and the information we gained from it to kind of wrap up and put a bookend on the 2022 season. But we'll start off first talking about the game. A very hard-fought game, a game that at least made me very proud of the team, and I'm curious to hear what Chris and Peter felt about this game.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like, having had a few days, I think, to reflect on this a little bit. Is it in the top 5 worst playoff losses or playoff exits that the Ravens have ever had? I don't think so. Going into it, I definitely didn't have super high expectations that they would win it. Like, I thought that there might be a chance, but to be honest, like, if they won, that would have been great, but I didn't think that it would kind of lead to anything more than that. So, going into it, kind of low expectations, kind of tapered down a little bit, but like you said, Alec, yeah, what sucks is they played well enough to win the game and to give you some hope, and then they took it away. That was a little frustrating, but overall, yeah, it was a pretty good performance, and we'll go into some of the details later. But what do you think, Peter?
I mean, I think you guys both summed it up great. Really proud of the guys and the coaching staff too. Let's give them some credit too. I did not think the Ravens were going to win this game, so going into the game with measured expectations certainly helped me watch the game. Going into but it's funny, like you said, the hope. They brought back the hope a little bit there. I went into it being like, okay, I'm just going to watch this game. I'm going to view this as a celebration of everything that went right this year for the Ravens, and just relish in the fact that hopefully we'll make Cincinnati have to work for it, and kind of beat them up a little bit and have them come in hobbled to their game next weekend. Which arguably is what the Ravens did. But, man, when Huntley had that run after the Ravens got the ball back, after the defense shut down the Bengals offense, game was tied, man, as he was running with the ball, the hope, it came into me. I jumped up from the couch and basically like caught myself in the action of doing it, because I was just like, willing him to the end zone, and then when I could see that he was going to go out by the 3, I was like, no, don't. Stop this! Get this back. Let's do some breathing exercises. Even as I texted in the group, going 3 yards for that offense last year, and we can call it last year's offense now, was like going 50. It's just so I was just like, man, if Huntley, if he had switched hands with that ball, he might have been able to get it over across the pylon. He might have also fumbled it too, so who knows? But yeah, I remember telling Alice, she was like, because obviously with the infant, sleep is at a premium, and she was like, man, like, I want to go up to bed right now, but like it looks like they might do it, so I want to stay up. But I was like, so literally we were talking about that as the Gus Edwards run happened. So I was just like, look, if they get a field goal here, I think Cincinnati will come back and score a touchdown. If they score a touchdown, they'll panic Cincinnati. So let's just see what happens here, and then you'll know whether or not you should stay up. And immediately as I finish saying that is when the ball gets stripped and Hubbard starts running back. So I'm just like, yeah, you should go to sleep. It was just... And I can't think of many more frustrating plays in Ravens playoff history than that. I agree that as a whole, the loss of it itself is not a top 5 frustrating exit, because expectations were highly tempered for what this team could do. But just to lose it on a play like that was just completely botched. No one knows what Huntley was doing. I do believe Harbaugh that he wasn't supposed to jump over it. But again, it's also kind of odd that he did that in the first place. Like, shouldn't the coaching staff have told them, or they had known that I don't know. But yeah, we're all. It's. I've certainly was able to move on from it by Tuesday, but after the game ended, I just turned the TV off and just kind of sat on the couch in darkness for 45 minutes, just reliving that play in my mind. It's just trying to contemplate what it was that we just saw, that we had seen there, but.
The game was a beautiful microcosm of the season, in my opinion. They shot themselves in the foot, unfortunately. They lost a game they should have won. You watch the film, and there's a lot to be happy about. And it could have went the other way. It could have just as easily been a win, and we were like, oh my God, they grinded it out. They played their game plan perfectly. They didn't let them score touchdowns easily. Everything was hard for the Bengals. We were able to get, an opportune turnover. We were able to actually be successful in the red zone, which was really cool to see. And we hit some big plays. We took some risks on 3rd and 1. Like a whole bunch of things went so right that could be applauded. But then at the end of the day, they just weren't able to execute. And that one play, this, I guess, where I'll let it in. Like, I did end up going to the game. I was there, and we sat at the 35-yard line, closer to where the Ravens were trying to punch it in. So I saw that run down to the 3-yard line. I was watching him, and we thought we were all cheering. We thought maybe he could do it and get in, but not quite. And then we see like the weird Ricard screen thing that didn't work, and then the sneak. And it's one of those things where it was so loud in that place that we were watching the Hubbard thing, just being like, is there a flag? Are they going to blow a whistle? Like, was forward progress stop? It was like, and then nothing was coming out, and then you just see, well, I was seeing it the whole time, but you see Mark Andrews running his heart out. Unbelievable effort. One of the coolest things, like, honestly, I've ever seen live, because like it definitely seemed like a superhuman hero move by him to like run that fast and like chase down this guy. I mean, he was motoring. It was pure will. No one else on the field was trying as hard as he was. Not even Hubbard, and it was awesome to see that. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to stop him. But he was right. He said in the pros game, like, if I caught him, how our defense was playing, it could be 3 points. That's a whole different game, And it would have been for them, because they could have kicked the field goal instead of having to do the weird things that they did near the end of the game. So, anyways, really unfortunate. And I guess I'll give a brief Cincinnati review. Remarkably efficient airport. We got in and out so fast getting our rental car. Like, it was super duper fast. Ken was like blown away by it. He was like, this is the fastest thing. He's like, you need to be working in like hospital triage. You're so good at this. Like, I've never gotten a rental car so fast. And then from like an actual like stadium perspective, I thought the stadium was not great. I think that Baltimore is very spoiled by our stadiums. Like, our stadiums are really top notch, both baseball and football. It was really hard to find our seats. Like, we didn't like go the wrong way, but you had to look closely for the signs. Like, the signs were like the same size as like, I don't know, tiny signs you would find somewhere. So you had to like get kind of close to them to see the numbers, to see like, oh, this is that section. So like, I had to get close enough to one to be able to read it, and then like guess that it was like 2 every one. 2 for every tunnel, and then be like, I guess this is the one, and it was. But like, they weren't like huge. Like, an M&T Bank, they're like huge, and you can just see them as you're walking by, or at anywhere. Opacity, same deal, huge. Actually, any park I've ever been to has never been as difficult as this one. It's like these really small signs. And then when we got there, it was remarkably loud. And mind you, I like can't really remember what it was like in 2013 when I was at M&T Bank in the lower bowl. I don't know if it was just where I was there or if they were pumping in noise, which I heard Harbaugh thinks that they were. But yeah, it was extremely loud there. And we couldn't even really communicate that well. We were like yelling at one another to like talk right next to each other. So kind of wild. On the way in, this drunk punk wanted to fight me, but everyone else was pretty good. The kid's friend eventually slapped him, so I felt a little better about the whole situation, that like I wasn't in the wrong. Basically, he's just started to try to pick a fight with us, like about 2 blocks away from the stadium, being like the Ravens fans. And he's like, "Why you guys even bother coming to the jungle?" Giving me crap. And I was like, it's because your team's fragile. I think we can beat them. Which, like, he started it, so I felt like I could say that. He's like, "Oh, you want to fight?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm just telling you, like." And I gave him the whole, like, you might as well win this battle, but you're certainly not going to win the war. So don't get your hopes too high. Neither of these teams are winning a Super Bowl, and he didn't like that either. But I'm not good at knowing my boundaries. Eventually, I stopped because I was just like, this kid's like, unhinged. You can say that same kind of thing to another guy who's like poking fun at you, and it would just be all fun and games. But that kid was definitely had drank enough that because he had a beer like actively in his hand. I was like, yeah, he's not. He's not taken to this very well. All in all, though, my number one thing is like I would go back because I think this is going to be a good rivalry for years to come, and I think a lot of really good games. And Cincinnati in itself is kind of nice. Like it's a compact city. You can walk it pretty nicely. They're kind of allergic to making money. After the game, everyone wanted to go to bars, and like almost all of them were closed, and the ones that weren't closed were absolutely packed. So I don't know if there was like a better district, but like near where our hotel was, like it was out of control. So we ended up just giving up and going to the hotel bar and dealing with the crowd we knew rather than like keep searching for crowds further and further away. So, yeah. But, excuse me, I would definitely do it again. I haven't been to a playoff game in a really long time. And the atmosphere is just so like extra level of just the intensity of it all. So a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, how do we follow that? Well, at least it wasn't decided by a coin flip. Then the Bengals would have been even more ridiculous and irate. Oh, also, by the way, Mixon's still complaining about that. Still don't really understand why, but okay. But I'm with you, man. Yeah, it'd be pretty cool to go. I told you before the game, I hope that your away playoff record would be better than mine. I'm also 0-1. But going to Pittsburgh, not to Cincinnati. So I'm fortunate to say you're right here with me at the bottom.
Hate to say it, man. Well, hopefully the next time there's an away game, we can bring the power of all three of us or something, and we can really knock it out of the park. That is a force that no away team can handle. One of us not strong enough. We need the Avengers.
Bring in the three big guns. Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, all descending. Oh, man. Anyways, yeah, but, one thing I will say about this playoff game was it's funny. It's just been so long since we've had a playoff game where we can be proud of what both the offense and the defense put out there. Because even though, in 2020, they did win 2 playoff games, like, the offense was abysmal in those games, and certainly we would have loved to see the offense be a little better in this game, but they should have scored 3 touchdowns. That would have been more offensive touchdowns than the Ravens scored in all of 2 games in 2020, right? I think they only scored 2 touchdowns across both those games. There might have been a second touchdown against Tennessee that is escaping my mind right now. But if we're talking about things to look forward to as far as, what can the Ravens build on this, I do think it was a silver lining from this game was, like we were saying at the onset, the Ravens still have in their culture that they can go into the playoffs and on the road and not be intimidated by the situation, even in a case where you're down your best overall player and a couple other really key guys like Rashad Bateman. So that was something I think we take away as a positive, especially when we're going in. We'll talk later on in the pod about what this team's going to look like going forward. Or we got a few glimpses of that, I think, today. That I think was a really encouraging takeaway for the immediate future.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Like you said, they for the most of the game, I think had poise. It wasn't too big for them. I think the only really struggle was, aside from the play, basically, was trying to score at the end of the game. I think, but given kind of some of the issues on offense and receiver depth and all that stuff, like the criticism of the 2019 offense of not being able to play from behind, that's totally valid for 2022. I feel like there are very few games that I can think of this year that I was like, oh yeah, the offense is definitely going to score last when they have the ball last. Just, not in their DNA, not in their DNA this year. But I tell you what, yeah, like like you're kind of saying, as far as encouraging things, there's, a lot I think to like about the offense. Like you said, had the potential to score 3 touchdowns. I thought J.K. Dobbins, I think, was a difference maker this game. Gus also to some extent, although I do think that maybe he was kind of trending a little bit down after the, concussion protocol. Just, maybe didn't look exactly like himself. But Dobbins, I think, he obviously did a great job on that, great individual effort on that first touchdown. It was just pretty fantastic. Lean on him. I think he's a guy that you can, use to improve this red zone offense. And, in addition to him too, man, like Mark Andrews, I thought, they had the stat, I think, on the broadcast where they were like, the last couple of playoff games that the Ravens have had, he really hasn't had a big game. But I think this game truly, he was a safety blanket. The Ravens found ways to get him open, and he stepped up with some really big catches. And, I don't remember the yardage count. I think it was over 5 receptions, maybe 6 or something. But yeah, he was a difference maker. He was helping to keep plays alive and move the chains. And, if he would somehow be able to get that Hail Mary at the end of the game, like, oh man, that would have been even more special. But, I don't blame him that he didn't. It still definitely had a big impact.
Yeah, 5 catches for 73 yards for Mark, and he was just fighting on every play. And there were certainly some other cases where he was open, and unfortunately Huntley didn't see him. That could have gone for bigger gains too. But it was really great to see that. That arguably is the best playoff performance we've seen from Andrews in his career, which makes sense. He had a good year in 2020, but he obviously stepped his game up in a pretty big way in 2021, even though this year was down from a statistical standpoint compared to that. I feel like with the exception of a few games in the middle of the season when after that Tampa Bay game when he had to go out for the shoulder injury, for the most part looked basically like what he did last year. So it's good to see him show up and have a strong performance in the playoffs. And Dobbins is another interesting case. I agree. He had a great game. He did voice his frustration after the game that he felt the Ravens should have given him the ball more, particularly at the goal line, which I can't fault him. That being said, I do think his overall usage was good, but the decision to not give him any goal line carries was an interesting one. And really, it feels like he didn't get any goal line carries down the stretch after his second surgery. I don't know if that was the Ravens were trying to be cautious with him or what, but that was an interesting one. Not something I want to dwell too much on since, as we'll get to later, there'll be some new minds deciding who's playing in what formations going forward with the Ravens. But that was an interesting one, and you kind of felt like, I'm not saying that would have been the difference, but come on, why is J.K. Dobbins not getting goal line work?
I mean, the guy willed himself into the end zone by the receiving catch, and I just think there was some weird non-usage of Dobbins, like the Mark Andrews run. I'm sorry, like J.K. Dobbins he has amazing vision. Gus Edwards is the hammer. Mark Andrews is a great player, but like, what is this? Like, I just didn't understand why they put him in that situation. I don't think it was trickery.
Right. There's a reason why Justin Tucker isn't running 9 routes. You don't put your great players in situations they won't be great at. That's an exaggeration, but you get the point.
I mean, that's a great one though. It's almost as egregious, honestly. Like for everything Gus Andrews, everything that Mark Andrews is, he's not that. Like, he never has been that. A QB sneak's kind of straightforward. I can get that, where you just run forward, or a pitch play like that, whatever, that's fine. But make him a running back, it's like he's never done that before. It's just, I thought it was pretty dumb. But I will say, like, that was my big takeaway. All of the skill position players balled out. Like, Josh Oliver made a crazy catch. Sammy Watkins did something. Demarcus Robinson showed his preseason form and just roasted Eli Apple and scored a touchdown. There was a lot of really nice plays by the skill position players in this game.
Yeah, definitely trending up. Want to talk about that Oliver play too, because that was a
wild sequence.
What could have been a really bad play from Huntley ended up being a fantastic play. Not only for him to be able to corral the football and keep his eyes downfield to make the throw, but it was a heck of a catch by Josh Oliver too. I feel like that play in a nutshell too was like, that was the one that also added hope. Because you have a flashback to that 2020 playoff game against the Bills where McCary was snapping the ball wherever. Like even, Lamar struggled with that. And I think, that was one of the plays where he ended up getting hurt. And, you kind of look and see that with Huntley, and you're like, oh my goodness, like, this is going to happen again, and it's going to happen again. But he was able to corral it and make that play, and it was like, wow, okay, all right, maybe we got something here. I look at that play too, man. I know we've ragged on Huntley a little bit. At the end of the day, I do think it was a really good game from him. I think it was a gaffe on the QB sneak. I wouldn't have done that in that situation. I think a lot of people have kind of been talking about that to death. Moving forward, like, I could see basically that he's got a little bit more to give. And I think, it would be interesting to kind of have him back as the backup. Obviously if I were the Ravens, I wouldn't, rule out maybe bringing someone else in. But, that is an encouraging sign, though, that he continues to have room to grow. I think, kind of goes back to what you said, Peter, of just like, the team had poise. Probably, some of the most poise that they've had in the last couple of weeks. I think they proved that this game wasn't too big for them. So I think that has to have something.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, Huntley's got roasted. It's going to continue to get roasted for that gaffe. I mean, every player makes mistakes every game. It's just that one was particularly awful, and it just wasn't the place to do that. And obviously it had a huge swing on the game. But yeah, I don't think I'd go far as to say that I'd want Huntley back. I would love for actually the Ravens to find a new backup quarterback. I think Huntley's time here has come and gone. But that said, one thing you can never take away from the guy is I think he is one of those guys who does go out there and give it his all. He, like we said, he went there and he fought for this team. And I think that's why the team loved the guy. It was quite clear that the guy was someone who the team liked. You always saw whenever he made a big play, he got a bunch of congrats from guys on the team. And of course, you'd love to see better play, but he was a good team guy. He did everything that a backup quarterback is supposed to do. Ideally, your backup quarterback is not asked to be in the situations that he was asked to be down the stretch, but that's just what has to happen, unfortunately. So we'll see. I would imagine the Ravens would want to move on too, and just find some more consistency there. But hopefully we don't have to worry about a backup quarterback for a few years to come, preferably the rest of a good part of a decade, because Lamar will be re-signed and this bad luck of injuries he had the past 2 seasons will go away and he'll have an Iron Man streak like Flacco. But that's asking a lot. Maybe we're asking a little. I don't know. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I guess what I really want to say is whatever you think of Huntley's play, I do think the guy tried, and I do think that the team really liked the guy, and they were rooting for him, even if they did drive him a little crazy. Alec, I don't know if you've seen the in-game interview yet that Harbaugh had after the first quarter.
I did.
You obviously weren't watching the broadcast. Yeah. But
I actually saw it at the game because it was like popping up on Twitter enough.
Oh,
and
okay.
I was able to like put my phone right next to my ear kind of thing and listen to it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I watched it again, just like the video, but having know what he said and like just seeing his facial expression of like, let's just watch the gameplay. I was like, oh, what a guy.
You could definitely, again, like we were talking about reading in between the lines a couple weeks ago with Mark Andrews' presser, you could definitely... You definitely got way more words out of that interview than just what Harbaugh said verbally. that was for certain. But yeah, the whole team fought on offense and defense too. We got to talk about that. Roquan Smith obviously got the contract, and he did something that I really wanted to see him do, which was lead this defense in a strong performance against a top tier offense in the NFL. He did that on the road in wild card weekend. I mean, Smith had a great game, but he wasn't the only one. We were talking about how all the skill position players on offense had big games. There were a ton of players on the defense that had huge games too. So we'll get into that. But yeah, I think we have to start out with Roquan though, because he's the guy with the contract. The guy just got the extension. He's going to be locked up as a Raven for the next couple of seasons, assuming all goes well. And he was a force during that game.
Unfortunately, I didn't think it was the true like terminate row that I was hoping for. Of like, I think he got some of those best, hits, not just like hits, but you know what I mean? Like the best, intimidation done in week 1 of this matchup. But he definitely, played a strong game. And I thought that, the defense in general was just so strong. The one thing I also wanted to point out, I was looking at our bold predictions, guys. We got a little greedy. So, I hit mine with the 2 touchdowns, but Peter, you said 50 yards. It was 41, and he could have easily gotten 50. It just there wasn't enough field. That's the hard part when you do those long play ones. Is it matters how much field there was. He could have been 70 yards if it happened earlier.
Well, I still give myself credit for pulling that. Made that one up on the spot, and immediately when I said it, I was just like, you know what? That play is going to be there if they want to take it. There's no way Cincinnati's going to guard that. So, it's going to be there if they want it, and sure enough, it was. But
I think Chris's man, the Huntley lead, then they'll fail in the end. I was like, oh, we never got the lead, but we were leading at not in the fourth quarter at least, but we were leading at halftime, which was so surreal. When we were leading at halftime, that's when the hope really hit me. That's when I was like, we can do this. We're already ahead at a major inflection point in the game. So that's the hope. That's how it kills you.
Yeah, it's funny. I totally forgotten about that bold prediction until you guys reminded me. I'm like, why did you call for that? Because that's exactly what happened. But anyway, we should definitely move on to the defense a little bit. Roquan had a good game. I didn't think it was super outstanding. It wasn't a 16 tackle performance or whatever it was the week prior. Yeah, I mean, I think like Justin said, I think the Bengals attacked the defense a little bit differently. I think they had a little bit more success on some of the underneath stuff, particularly third down. I think Marlon Humphrey actually talked about that in his end of season interview. Basically, he said he didn't have his best game. I think he let up some stuff underneath, for them, especially early on. I think overall, I think it was a pretty solid performance. I mean, you take away the fumble return for a touchdown. Like the week before, I think the Ravens defense played overall pretty well. Obviously, I think the big play we kind of have to talk about, Alex Guy, Kyle Hamilton, that fumble on Hurst early in the game. I mean, that was a huge momentum shift, allowed the Ravens to be able to get up ahead. And, without that, I think the game looks a whole heck of a lot different.
For sure, man. We see how important those turnovers are when it's so close to the, red zone. That makes a big swing. And it was cool. You could see it. I don't know if you could see it in the broadcast view, but you could definitely see in the all 22 on that play. And it happened, the play happened immediately in front of where we were at the 35-yard line. But Owe has his water bottle and he's spreading it around like he's at the club and it's just spraying everywhere. It was kind of cool to watch that. They were partying on the sideline when that happened.
That's great. Well, I mean, Owe himself, he's another guy who stepped up and had some plays here. Granted, for that sack on Burrow, all he had to do was just wave his left arm, and that gust of mighty wind that he had just
swept him
Burrow
off his feet.
Absolutely. Oh man, his speed was on display as well. There was it was one of the final Cincinnati drives, might have been the drive before the Ravens had their final crack at trying to tie the game up. Yeah. It was, Burrow had that sneak, and Owe, he was on the opposite side of the field, and he tracked him down, and there were some other defenders there. Burrow might not have made it, but I think it would have been close. Owe definitely stopped him far enough that there was no question that he wasn't getting the first there. Huge effort play from him there. Hopefully a sign of things to come. We don't know what's happening with Houston and Pierre-Paul, if they'll be coming back. So hopefully we can get Owe there, and he can be a force with Ojabo and Bowser. So good to see him step up there and have some big plays.
Yeah, his performance was really wild. Just I mean, I'm even looking at the last couple of weeks. Usually you kind of see a progression up. I feel like Owe's was just where was Odafe Owe the whole season?
He came out of nowhere. Just decided, oh hey, the season started. We're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean,
it was playoffs. It's the playoffs. It's football time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate that. You always want to save your best performance for the playoffs, but yeah, no, it was great. And I think one thing that I feel like I saw a lot out of this game, but I think it kind of has been leading up to is that Mike McDonald's been playing a little bit more of him kind of on the inside, right? Now that we have a luxury of outside linebackers, kind of goes back to some of the race car packages of old, right? Of having all these outside linebackers on the field. And, I think Owe had a little bit of success there. I don't have the stats in front of me, but, he was pretty effective, I think, on the inside. But the sack that you're mentioning, Peter, I think that was him just up against the left tackle, Jonah Williams.
Yeah.
And, so he was having a good bit of success on the inside and out. And, it was probably one of the, top 3 performances that I can think of on the defense. He played really, really well.
Now, I mean, I do think we need to point out that the Bengals' offensive line was incredibly beat up, and Jonah Williams, I'm pretty sure they said on the broadcast, had given up something like 12 sacks all season. But still, I don't care. He still did it in the playoffs on the road. He didn't choose he was going up against. I still think that can be something that he can build on. And again, we've said it before. Ravens have had plenty of instances of pass rushers as of late. Pernell McPhee, Zadarius Smith, Paul Kruger, Tyus Bowser, who incredibly inconsistent. Just the stretches of games you forgot they were even on the team during their first 2-3 seasons, and then turned out to be studs in this league. So hopefully Owe can put it together and take that career trajectory, because there's certainly athleticism there that can be unlocked.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool to see him in those rush nickel looks on the inside. Definitely want to see if that's more of a thing they do in the future. But it was funny because before the game even started, when we were at dinner, we were talking about the kind of players on the team that in 2023 will be the biggest wild cards, the ones that could really make the biggest step. And we all agreed that Owe was one of those guys that, like, he has plenty of potential still. He just needs to be able to show it on a consistent basis. And I thought that play where he chased down Burrow, like you were describing, Peter, was a really interesting one, because for so many times I heard, about his speed and how fast he was at the combine. And you don't see it on the field. But in that play, when you watch it, it's like, oh, he's fast. Like,
that's his speed.
I don't know if it was because it was playoff ball and he gave it his all or what, but like, he hit a whole different gear on that play that was so cool to see. And that's the kind of athleticism that we need to see. I honestly felt like he was almost going through mud sometimes when I was watching him. It's just like, he never got up to that speed. And like some plays, like people would out chase him and you're like, come on, man. Like, you're faster than them. Why aren't you catching them, or at least gaining ground? Like, why are you going stride for stride? And I'm hoping this is a sign of things to come. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe he just was worn down because he was playing so many snaps early in the season. I don't know, but he definitely seemed to have an extra gear in that game, and we need that from him next year. It could be a huge win. And honestly, if his frame and his skill set does allow for him to do these rush nickel looks and be effective, I think that's a great way to get him on the field next to, be it Houston or Ojabo, like whoever the pass rush outside linebacker will be on those plays. That's a cool tandem. So very excited for Owe. I hope he has a big year 3. But I guess we talked about this defense as a whole. They only allow 4.3 yards per play, an astonishing 52 yards rushing all game. Burrow only passed for 209. I mean, if you told me that before the game, I think we win this game. It's very surprising that we held them to such low yardage totals and didn't win.
Well, like we said, it all came down to that one play. It literally was that one play. It's just like it's going, and basically what happened was the Ravens, they were in a very even chess match with the Bengals. They got up by one piece. They took Cincinnati's knight and then didn't realize that they left their queen in, completely unprotected and lost that way. That's really what it was. And it just, once that touchdown happened, as much as the offense overperformed, there was just no way, I think, that anyone on that sideline was going to be able to find a way to get everyone to have the collective mentality of okay, guys, I know we've struggled to move the ball all this season, but we're really going to go all the way back down the field again and score a touchdown.
They almost tough. They almost did, man.
They had a shot. Part. They had a shot, and I mean, that clock management was certainly something at the end there. It's kind of all I want to really say on that, because again, I'm not over dissecting things that shouldn't be, an issue next year. hopefully. But but that goes back to what we're saying. Like, the players played, they fought the whole game.
Sure did. I guess like one last parting thought is that I think this game was a look behind the curtain almost of what the 2023 defense will try to achieve. Like what they did in this game was exactly the kind of game plan I think their overall strategy will be. We'll give you yards, but we're going to make it really difficult for you to actually score. And we saw like that. That's the thing that's crazy is that really like those 260 some yards that the Bengals had, only one of those drives was like a big drive, maybe two, where they actually like strung together a bunch of plays and scored off of them. All the rest was like short fields from the interception or the turnover where they weren't even on the field. So I think that's the big thing is you might be able to put together a couple first down conversions, but you're not going to be able to score. You're going to have to punt. And I think that's kind of cool. Like basically you're like between the 30s, fair enough. Once you get there, good luck. So I like that strategy, and I think it's a good way to slow down the game and give the opportunity to the offense to be able to rebuttal with their long drives and keep the game interesting. So it's a good formula against these faster teams, just to slow them down that way.
Yeah, definitely. One other player I guess we can probably talk about a little bit, who kind of made his presence a little bit known. Marcus Peters. I think this is his first game back since the calf injury, I recall. Or was he back?
Yeah, because he didn't play. He didn't play.
He didn't play the last
week.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, I thought he played pretty well. Obviously, yeah. you kind of either really love it or you really don't like it when sometimes he was getting into the face of some of the Bengals players, Mixon and a couple other of them. I think there's a personal foul in there somewhere or something. Which wasn't great, kept the drive alive, but you live with it, I guess. I thought he played okay. I think he had some good defense. I think that one pass? I think it was Higgins. I think in the end zone was able to kind of push him out and prevent him from getting that catch. Overall, I think his return definitely helped. Also knowing that Brandon Stevens and Pepe Williams were both out. Putting him alongside Humphrey. I thought Humphrey had a decent game overall. I think was picked on a little bit underneath, which is why Chase had so many targets. I think he had 12 targets, 9 receptions, I believe. But like you said, Al, like it was, from the defensive formula, it was like they were letting them have all that underneath stuff, just preventing him from really being a yards after catch monster or to catch anything over the top. They prevented all that stuff, and I thought overall Peters played pretty well in that and kind of helped.
Do we want to do I don't know if we want to do moral victories. It's kind of a weird part when you're going to go into the next segment with the press conference. How do you feel?
Nah, we never do moral victories after the final loss of the season.
That's fair.
Although, to be honest, this whole episode has been a moral victory awards ceremony.
It has been. And actually, you know what? Actually, I'll say this now. Our next episode, we're going to prepare it, is going to be like, I don't know what the right word is for it, but we're basically going to write little like blurbs about each player and like a nice little like what they contributed or like a fond memory from the season from them. And just kind of like remember this team. Because I think that's one of the most depressing parts about football is that this group of men will never play together again. There will be people that leave in free agency that we don't want to see leave, people that would be fine with them leaving, but and then new players brought in, and it's just never the same group of men. So a special team this year, a team that fought hard, a lot of really cool, good players, some nice stories, and we want to make sure to like remember all that. So we'll be putting that episode out next week. But next up is the press conference. So 90 minutes before, the Greg Roman people released a statement saying, like his agency, I didn't even know if Greg Roman had an agency, really released a statement saying that he was going to go pursue other things. And then a couple minutes later, the Ravens have a quote from John Harbaugh about, wishing the best of luck. He did historical things for us. I thought it was very classy the way that they are doing this exit. And so like Ravens Twitter kind of erupted as expected, and the inevitable happened. The cockroach is dead, so to speak, and Greg Roman won't be here next year.
I don't know what people are going to complain about anymore. This is crazy. It
Lamar
opens
not being
up
signed?
so many. It opens up so many tweets and YouTube comments. Like, you don't have to say fire Greg Roman anymore.
Now they're gonna say fire John Harbaugh. I'll be honest, like that's what they're gonna move on to.
Maybe you're
Just
right.
gonna go up the
Well,
chain.
and then
Probably right.
whatever the fallout is with Lamar, because if the Ravens don't retain him, obviously that's going to be just absolute nightmare. But then when he does get his deal with the Ravens, which I still expect he will, then it's going to be all about his contract. We know that. That's how it was with Flacco. That's how it's going to be with Lamar. Flacco and Lamar both have had their own unique strengths and weaknesses, but it does appear that the period where the entire fan base was united in that Lamar can do no wrong is starting to wane, and I'm sure a big contract won't help that. Fair or not, that's just the way the business is, and people are allowed to feel how they want to feel about money. But yeah, let's go back to talking about happier things. And now I'm going to immediately walk that back a little bit because I don't want to talk about someone, moving on from a position as a happy thing. But I mean, here is the thing. Like there's at least it's great. I think it's great for both parties. Just like Wink, last year, it was quite clear that as much as he'd done well for the defense, his scheme there wasn't working with the new type of players that they were bringing in and what they wanted to do. And he's had a great success his first year as defensive coordinator for the Giants. They did great in limiting Justin Jefferson in the playoffs this week, and now they've got a big divisional matchup with the Eagles, which should be a fun game to watch this weekend. And Greg Roman, he's had enough success in the league and in college that I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a really good job somewhere after this. And it probably is best at this point for his career for him to get a fresh start and to try his approach with a new set of guys and a new organization. And the Ravens, it's time for them to finally move on to offensive coordinator who can elevate this passing attack, elevate Lamar's game. Going back to my analogy a couple weeks ago, I do feel like, and I'm not the only one, that the Ravens are kind of keeping the 10-year-old on the tricycle with Lamar and not allowing the offensive scheme to grow enough. It did grow some. The passing attack did grow some, but we were always wanting more. I think Lamar wanted more. I think that the players wanted more. And hopefully, we'll see who the Ravens are able to get, but hopefully this is the first step in getting a complementary passing offense to pair with what should already be still an excellent rushing offense, regardless of who's there, given the personnel that'll be in place and the Ravens' philosophy with drafting linemen.
I wish I wrote down the exact words Harbaugh used, and maybe one of you guys can help me because I think we all watched it. But he said something during the conversation about offensive coordinators that kind of hit me well. And it's not personnel, but it was like, and it wasn't scheme, but it was
Philosophy?
Philosophy, exactly. That was the
I think it was.
It was philosophy. And when he said that, it dinged in my head because I think the biggest thing is we want to get away from Giro's, like, I don't know if it's even a philosophy, but he just seems to like try to galaxy brain 3-dimensional chess a little too much, and he doesn't like want to just be who he is. And I think that's what kills us the most as Ravens fans. Like, you have this amazing run game, and like it's 3rd and 1. Maybe you just use the running back, like, why are you going this like crazy trick play? Like, or like the chicanery they did with Prochet, and they called that play, and it was just like, that's not who you are. Like, you don't like, I'm not against trick plays, but just some of the timings were bad, and just decision making that he sometimes did. And when he tried to do certain things, I think is what I'm almost most excited about. Cause I think he had, like you said, we had the cookbook. We just aren't like executing the recipes right. I think that's the big change for me. I think Giro can succeed in other places. I don't think he's actually like horrendous, but I do definitely think it's good that we're moving on. And I'm curious, I don't think they're going to hire from within. I know they're entertaining those people and they're interviewing them, but I think they would have moved to him this season if they truly thought they were the right person for the job. I think that they're going to hire externally, and I think it's going to be a good idea. And I'm excited to see all the, and they said too, like, I think everyone's going to want this job and they're going to learn a lot of different cool ideas during these interview processes. So like, oh, that's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. And I think even just the interview process in and of itself will be valuable to the team.
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody was saying there's like 10 other teams, I think, that have offensive coordinator openings. So going to be a lot of movement for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, it's, like we said, man, like just throughout the season, I don't know. My whole like initial thing with Roman is just like a lot of, I feel like he's unfortunately had a history of doing exactly what we kind of said, and to the point that it's like almost everything could be explained like, oh, well, it's just Roman. This is how he always does, and like it's always going to be an issue. And like a lot of the time, I think it's just a lot of it was overblown, and just it was an easy excuse to be just like, oh, well, Roman sucks, fire Greg Roman. But it was just, all that said, it was just time. It was just time. We need something. We need this offense to evolve. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think there are a good bit of players on this offense that can still be and will still be building blocks for whatever, the 2.0 Ravens offense looks like. Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, a couple of the linemen, Lamar, they're going to Bateman, they're still going to be here. We're talking in the press conference. I do think it's interesting. I feel like Eric and John were both a little upfront in that the receiver room is probably going to look a lot different, which is really interesting to me. Obviously, the free agents that we kind of brought in, personally, I don't think any of them are really like probably worthy to keep around. I mean, sure, maybe we might extend somebody, even as like a, somebody to be in the locker room. But I thought they were pretty upfront about it. Of that definitely needs to be a focus of improvement for next year. Obviously we'll see how that happens, and with Lamar's situation, that complicates the formula. I think Eric was pretty upfront about that too. But yeah, they weren't holding back. I thought that was probably one of the more interesting things there, that they definitely realized that they need to get better there.
It was really refreshing to hear that. I don't think that we've heard the Ravens address the need to boost the wide receiver room anywhere to close to that degree of frankness and honesty since the end of the 2017 season. Now we'll see what that ends up being in actuality, and what those words actually mean to the Ravens. But again, last time they said that, I can't remember the exact words. I can't remember if it was Ozzie or Harbaugh or even Bisciotti who said it, but there was something to the effect that they needed players who could catch the ball and make plays. And we know 2017 was also a year with an abysmal receiving room. You had the inconsistent hands of Mike Wallace and pretty much no one else in that group. So going back to that year, what the Ravens did in the offseason, remember they picked up and had kind of the hodgepodge receiver group of Crabtree, Snead, and Smoke, and we know how that ended. But yeah, we'll see what the Ravens are actually able to do with that, but it at least gives the fan base some hope that, like, okay, we're on the same page that something needs to be done. What is it that does the front office and the coaching staff believe that what needs to be done is to the same degree as what the Ravens fan base as a whole? Obviously every fan has their own opinion, but I do think that there's kind of a coalition of what you could say the majority of fans want to see happen. We'll have to see if it's that drastic, but at least to acknowledge that in a press conference where the Ravens really didn't, as they usually don't, reveal terribly many concrete details, that was encouraging. And I think that we can at least expect that there will be some new guys on the team next season.
I did a show with Ken McCusick, and I kind of commented the same thing. Like, I'm surprised they just came out and said, we're going to address this wide receiver room in the way that they did, because it seems like they're going to make sweeping changes at, I think, both phases, free agency and the draft. And I think it was kind of interesting, too, because like if free agency doesn't work out, you've already admitted that you want to do this, so you're going to have to hit in the draft, which kind of like ruins your leverage a bit. But I think the whole NFL knows, is what he said. So it's like it's not that surprising. As far as people coming back, I think Demarcus Robinson as a fourth or fifth wide receiver is acceptable. It just can't be our number one. And
definitely not. Yeah. I agree.
And it never was supposed to be, right? It never was supposed to be.
Well, exactly, yeah.
I mean, maybe it was a number 3, which we're also saying is a little too high, but it never was supposed to be. So I think, actually, I guess he was almost number 2 because people were like, is he better than Duvernay? And Duvernay had his ups and downs at the beginning of the year. I definitely think it's interesting. It goes kind of hand in hand with getting Giro out of here. The offense might look different enough that paying wide receivers makes sense, because that was the whole conceit, is like, well, if we're going to run as much as we are and we're so effective running it, we're not going to get the touches and the targets necessary for these wide receivers to really be worth the price you have to pay for them. And part of me thinks that it might be true regardless, just because of the threat Lamar presents as a runner and like how good we are at running the ball and how dynamic we could be. But I think it's one of those things we need to invest in so that on 3rd and 7, we're not like, uh-oh. Because I think that's the biggest thing that's holding back our offense right now is you get one off schedule play, and then you have 3rd and 7. You're saying, "Uh-oh, I don't know I don't know if we have enough playmakers to make this happen." Go, first read, second read, have an injury. Now you're really in a bad spot. So that's and then they even said that in the press conference, like, we want to be able to attack 3rd and longs better than we were able to do before, and that's, I think, the missing piece of the offense right now, or the missing weapon on the offense is how do we defeat 3rd and 7? Right now, we don't have a consistent answer. It was encouraging news to hear Bateman's going to be running at full speed again soon, so hopefully he'll have a full off season. Duvernay stuff is still under wraps, so we don't know how bad his injury is and when he'll be available to run again.
Yeah, that was another really encouraging piece from the press conference. It's a little more concrete because there's certainly the worry in Ravens fans' minds after Bateman went down of like, how long is he going to be out? Is this going to be the same thing we saw with Dobbins and Gus, where they weren't ready till halfway through the season? And, again, we'll see what the Ravens wide receiver room is on day one, but you certainly want Bateman back for many reasons. So great to hear that he's going to be able to run, and hopefully his body responds well to that, and he's ready to go by training camp at the latest, and can finally have a true breakout season, be a consistent part of this offense. So that was encouraging to hear. I do think what you're bringing up with Duvernay, though, in both, we still don't have much news on his injury, as well as the tweet you shared in our chat the other day about the performance incentive that he got from the Pro Bowl, right? As interesting to see, obviously, to have Duvernay in this offense as a change of pace guy, if you have 2 or 3 receivers who are more traditional in the sense, it could still be a great weapon. I think we just started having to ask too much of him down the stretch as injuries mounted. But the performance incentive will be something interesting to watch for, because from what I remember, the number, it started to look like a little more than what you would want to pay for what he does bring to the team.
I think it was like 4.9 million or something. Yeah, I mean, certainly as a returner, definitely provides value. To that number, yeah, not sure. But it is hard. The Ravens are going to have to ask, whoever they bring in at offensive coordinator, are they going to be able to use Duvernay and get him more involved in the offense? Because he's been one of those players who has a very good skill set, but it is very niche, and he's one of those players that Greg Roman, offensive coordinator, really probably was not the best coordinator to be able to take advantage of those skills, right? Everybody wanted him to be a Debo light. I don't think he ever got there, even in the first couple of weeks of the season when he was getting tons of touchdowns. Like, I don't know if we were, if that was going to live long term, but yeah, I mean, he could be a piece. I feel like the Ravens probably want to figure out who the coordinator is going to be, though, before they make a decision on him. Because yeah, I mean, having a key special teams guy like him, I think it is valuable. Especially, I think even if I recall, Justice Hill, he's not a lock for next season, right? He would be a free agent, so we wouldn't even have him either. So if we didn't bring back Duvernay, we'd have to be looking at the draft or free agency to bring in somebody to fill that spot, if I recall.
Yeah, I think that we'll probably end up keeping Duvernay at the cost because I think he's worth about that in the open market. And if we're already going to have to like look at the open market for other players, what was it, 4.5 million? I think it is. I don't know what wide receiver,
right?
Yeah, I don't know what wide receiver you get for 4.5 million. It's going to play better than him, honestly, and then provide the return capabilities and stuff. Because, I mean, think about it. I don't know. Feel free to say I disagree, but I feel like to get any receiver worth talking about, you're usually paying at least $8 million. You know, so I guess what you're saying is like I'd rather pay the extra $5 million to get the $10 million guy than have $4 million on him.
Oh, I wasn't actually saying anything either way. I was just saying that was an added variable to watch, just to see, especially if like the Ravens get pretty tight on cap. I don't even know what really. I'm saying I haven't looked at all the ins and outs of it, but
yeah, sure.
It's just another variable to add into the offseason that I wasn't aware that he was up for. That what he had done with the Pro Bowls would have unlocked that in his contract, but so that was I thought that was interesting when you shared that message in the chat.
For sure, yeah, definitely interesting. I thought another interesting point of the conversation was a lot of the comments made about Lamar Jackson negotiations. The team did everything right in order to keep his value up. They talked about him extremely glowingly as far as a component of this team going forward. Although I will say the omission of how they talked about there's two personas. There's the player, the person, and then the agent of Lamar. And they gave all these glowing accolades to the player and the person and just left the agent part dangling. And I thought that was the absence of glowing variables is what I think they're like, man, that side of Lamar is a real stickler. Real challenging. So definitely, though, I think they kept this value high, and I left the conference more confident than I had been going in, even though I was pretty confident that they're going to try to hit a long-term deal. Or they're just gaslighting us to the ultimate extent, and they're going to trade him.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a big concern for me was, I think a couple days before, I think somebody had asked Jeff Z about it, and he had said something to like 50% would be the highest percentage that I could see him staying. And I think when I saw that, I was like, whoa, okay, that's new information that I maybe did not have. But yeah, with the press conference, definitely agree with you, Alec. Like, seems like they're not happy with the agent side of Lamar. But that being said, I thought it was interesting that kind of DaCosta brought up of like, look, we've done a lot of contracts. All of them are different, right? Some of them take a couple days. He said like Mark Andrews' contract, like a couple days. Roquan's contract, a couple days over the course of like a month or so. But it really didn't take that long. But then he was like, Ronnie Stanley took a year and a half.
Yeah.
And, Lamar's like probably longer. So like, he didn't say this, but like, does it suck to take that long? Yeah, probably does. But like, it's not like out of the realm of possibility. This isn't, something that is unique to this situation. He's kind of gone through this before. So I thought that was a little encouraging. Yeah. I mean, I think, the other thing kind of talked about too is like, we see Lamar on this team. But that being said, like it does present some challenges, right? Having to pay a quarterback at this stage, like, your roster construction is going to look a lot different. So, yeah, we're talking about like, players to keep or, where are we going to put our money and, how are we going to fill out the receiver room? Like, I think it'll be a little bit better than maybe what we did this year, which is sort of like pay vet min to guys last minute because that's who's available. It'll be a little bit different than that. But that being said, like, there's only so many millions to go around. And, the unfortunate thing is that there might be some hard decisions to make to be able to free up more cap. So, I kind of talk about it a little bit, but I feel like maybe a couple players already right now are kind of like, yeah, it's probably going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that the conference made you feel a little better based on a lot of wild stuff has been coming out while Lamar was hurt, and then after the season, it just felt like even more was out. And it's hard to weed through what's real and what's fake news. I mean, some of it is just so bad crazy that you're just like, that's pretty easy to weed out. But and I'm still a bit haunted from last year, and I know this is a completely different situation, but you know, when Hollywood Brown was doing all that stuff on Twitter, unfollowing the Ravens, scrubbing his Instagram, I was just like, I put zero weight into it. I was just like, I didn't think it meant anything. And then, of course, we find out behind the scenes, oh, man, he was asked for a trade, and it was not a surprise at all that we traded him for a first to Arizona during the draft. And look, it's completely different situations. And, of course, you know, there were obviously some rumblings that came out of him at times during 2020 and 2021. So it wasn't a 100% shock, but it was still pretty, you know, unexpected. I think Lamar will be here. I don't see why he wouldn't, based on what I know. But what do I know? I'll be happy when it's done. I can say that. I've been confident this whole time that he's going to sign. That he was going into the season just trying to see, you know, what's the most I can get out of this. Which, let's be honest, it's America. Regardless of what your political affiliation is, everyone's trying to get the most money that they can. Let's be real. So he's being like anyone else would in that situation. But yeah, I will admit, every day that that it hasn't happened yet, my confidence does die a little bit.
Sure. No, I mean, and that's reasonable. I think it's also interesting how he was like, I'm really happy our negotiations have remained private except for the part the NFLPA leaked, which was a fun dig. He wasn't even like remotely shying away from it. That's a whole nother topic, but I really kind of hate what the NFLPA is doing right now with this contract. I think the consensus of players should be upset. Like, it's crazy to me that quarterbacks make almost double what the next highest paid player on any team makes when they're a good quarterback, at least, you know? And I'm just like, these poor offensive linemen, these poor, you know, off-ball linebackers, like these poor running backs, they got no money, you know, like all the money's going to these quarterbacks. And like, I get why it's happening, but for the NFLPA to basically be like, yeah, we want like the select 10 players in the league to make that much more than everyone else. I don't know who that's benefiting except for 10 players, you know? It's not benefiting the Players Association.
Well, and then also you factor in the fact that the quarterbacks, you know, are the players who by far and away are going to have the longest careers outside of kickers. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And sports contracts in and of itself and where they've gone, you know, even just in the past decade is a huge topic that we could probably put in a whole other podcast on. But yeah, I guess I'll just say that I'm of the same mind of what you're saying.
I think we should talk about some of the players we think are going to get let go or are definitely on the edge. Really glowing things were said about Ben Powers. They said he was one of the best players on the team this year as far as like most improved. And they didn't come right out and say that we're not going to have him next year, but they said, I think he's going to get a lot of interest around the league, and I think him and his family are going to do really well, and we wish him the best of luck wherever it takes him, kind of thing. And almost for sure, just given the constraints that we have and the players we've already committed to and the players we want to commit to, I don't see Powers finding his way back in Baltimore, which is unfortunate because like he definitely is going to leave a hole on the left-hand side.
Yeah, it's funny how many off seasons coming in there where they're like, well, you know, why don't we try so and so at left guard? He might be an upgrade over Powers. Let's try this year after year, man. It just continued to own with it and get better and better. So, despite all of our best efforts to try and find somebody better for the role, yeah, I mean, I feel like this year in particular, you know, I can't really point to anything about his game where I was like, oh yeah, that was, you know, a liability here or like, you know, an issue here. Overall, extremely solid. Yeah, definitely deserving of whatever contract he's going to get. But, you know, another guy as well, you know, I feel like, you know, the writing's a little bit on the wall. Kind of was last year. But Chuck Clark, I think somebody had asked about Chuck Clark, and the first thing is basically just like, look, Chuck's a great player, consummate professional, just like awesome dude, really solid, dependable. But, nothing in there that make you think that like, oh yeah, he's definitely saying like, I mean, we all know we drafted Kyle Hamilton, like, and Chuck already kind of knew that last year going into it. He was not happy about it. Obviously, he talked about that in his end of season presser as well. And I hate to say it, man, but yeah, that's another position of just like, well, I can save a couple $1,000,000 here and maybe go out and buy, another player that we need on this team. And we've got a guy waiting in the wings. It seems really obvious, I think, and which sucks, Chuck's another one of those guys. I mean, Peter, I feel like you need to, say your piece here.
Chuck Clark's my guy, man. He's been one of my favorite players on this defense since he really came along in 2019. Just a savvy player the Ravens could line him up in so many places, and didn't make many of the highlight plays that will make like Sports Center stuff. But like, if you really enjoy watching film, Chuck Clark makes a lot of great plays. He had a really good season this year as well. Maybe not quite as good as some of his previous ones, but he certainly was a professional this year and played his role great. But I think his time here has come. I think it would be smart for both parties, give Chuck a chance to go to a team where he can be the guy on as the inline safety. Just he's still got plenty of years left in his career. Ravens get some draft capital back there, and another thing that really helped, it makes it unfortunately a no-brainer for the Ravens to move on, is Geno Stone continues to develop. Hamilton, I'm a little bit worried. He did get hurt a couple times this year. Nothing that was ever going to keep him out for multiple weeks, but there are multiple games where we saw him on the field, and he'll put on muscle, and he's a strong guy, but I think that lean build does offer some unfortunate opportunities, like get a stinger or a twisted ankle at times in football. Yeah, I mean, Geno Stone has really come along, and he's improved his game every year. So if anything were ever to happen to Hamilton, you've got a guy who can provide still really good, strong safety play at that position. So yeah, the Ravens are crowded at that position, and you've got some holes in other places. You got to figure out cornerback depth. Pepe and Armour Davis showed some flashes. They certainly, but they're unknowns. So I don't think you can 100% count on them. You're going to need to bring in a cornerback, whether that's re-signing Kyle Fuller or something else. If you're unable to re-sign Powers, which we think they're not going to be able to, you've got Ben Cleveland, but then what do you do when Zeitler retires? We talk about the wide receiver room. So, unfortunately, as any team in the NFL does, you have holes. And when you have a glut at one position, you got to trade to balance your team. So, hopefully, Chuck can go to a team where he can shine and continue to have a great career. Because I think he's someone who's earned that in this league, worked his way up as a 6th-round pick, and just really, really made his way in the NFL. So, hopefully the best happens for both parties in that situation.
For sure. They definitely alluded to the fact that they had about 3 free agents at the corner position that they can consider bringing back. I guess Peters too, so make it 4. But you had Fuller, Worley, and Seymour, all players that contributed at different levels this year and could be brought back. I thought Worley showed enough in that last couple games there. I was like, maybe he'll be asked to come back. Probably a vet min deal, so it's just nothing too crazy and a known commodity. And then as far as Justin Houston, JPP, and Campbell go, we'll see how that plays out. We'll see if Calais wants to return. In my opinion, if I had to choose, I want Calais to come back of the 3, just because he offers something unique and also is still playing at a high level. Whereas Houston, as excellent as he is, I can see how Owe and Ojabo can take those snaps and produce something. Like, we have a clear replacement, whereas what Campbell does is so unique. There's not quite the clear replacement. So I definitely kind of feel that way. And JPP with the run stopping, I think Owe is really good at that too. So it's not the end of the world. Obviously, you don't want to over provision these guys. You need to find more players that can eat up some snaps. But I guess what I'm just thinking about, like, uniqueness. And also, you can't beat Yes Sir. You can't beat The Voice. So, and I want him so desperately to get a ring. And I feel like his best chance is with us, unless I don't know. I don't see him going to another contender. I think he'll either stay here or quit.
Yeah, certainly it'll be sad to see Campbell or Peters go. I think that there's a great chance Peters doesn't come back. Like we've said, someone will probably still take a chance on him, but maybe he comes back on a cheap contract. We'll see. But I do think the defensive line, I agree with you. Yeah, what Campbell does, he's a unique player. He's one of the best at what he does in NFL history. I mean, the guy, he's just a freak. But you do feel good to have Justin Madubuike in the wings, as well as Travis Jones had a really promising rookie year. And Project Washington had a solid year too. Brent Urban might be back for another season. I forget what his contract situation is, but yeah, I mean, the defensive line, I think the good thing is we at least have immediate replacements that can make that unit work. Maybe they can't do exactly what Campbell was able to do, but still the foundations of that unit are still there. And Michael Pierce, yeah, maybe he'll come back and actually see the field. But yeah, it's always frustrating to see players go. Clark, Peters, Campbell. We'll see if any of them come back or if they're all on to new things now. But yeah, I definitely agree with the sentiment.
I think one last thing to bring up. I mean, maybe you guys have something too, but that was interesting. I got the vibe from DaCosta. He's cool with just having 5 picks in this draft. I've heard. I've gotten fully into my draft prep. I've heard that this draft might not be as deep as last year's, so you're dealing with less player pool. But also, he brought up the fact that our inability to keep players on the team. We saw Beatty get drafted, languish on the practice squad, eventually cancel his contract so he could pursue other options, which I'd never seen before. That was new to me. I guess maybe Tyson did something similar, but Tyson wasn't a draft pick, so it didn't matter as much. Definitely weird to see that. We had the defensive tackle, was it Sealer?
Sealer, yeah.
Yeah, that
had a big play in the playoffs this past weekend.
Yeah, he got slipped away because we didn't have enough room and things like that. So I think DaCosta's realized that I'm a little too good at this, and while he won't not take more capital, he'll gladly take more capital. Maybe this is not the year to have too many picks.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. I think it's fine. Especially I think there's certainly a section of the fan base that's why do I need to stockpile picks? Just spend a little bit more money in free agency, right? Just go buy a wide receiver, which is just totally fair. So having 5 picks isn't so bad. DaCosta brought up too. He's like, look, Ozzie had a draft years ago where we had 4 draft picks and we hit all of them. All very solid players. So, yeah, I mean, the big thing is just to make sure you hit with whatever you take. I feel like one of the top, 2 picks has to be a receiver. I think cornerback is definitely something that you probably consider as well. I'm sure, a couple other position groups, as long as it's not a fullback. I feel like it's the only thing we actually didn't mention is that Ben Mason's back on a reserve futures deal, I think. He was one of the players kind of targeted for that.
There's a bunch of them, though.
So there were.
Did you know we had a Bo Pete on the roster?
I did not know.
Oh my gosh.
Did not know that. But yeah, as long as we don't spend one of the 5 on another fullback, I think we'll be okay. Or a tight end. I guess we have too many tight ends at this point.
Oh yeah. When Harbaugh said that he thought the tight end room was going to stay intact, I was like, man, do you realize how crowded that room is? Does that I mean, obviously Andrew's likely Kolar, but are we including Oliver and Boyle are going to stay too? That is. That's we'll see what happens there. But,
we'll see what the offensive coordinator wants to do with all that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You don't have any coaches coming from make tight ends and fullbacks matter again incorporated anymore. But yeah, I mean, you look at the past 4 drafts Ravens have had 8 picks in 2019, 10 in 2020, 8 in 2021, 11 last year, including a 4th round where it sounds like we picked more players than we'll pick all of 2023 if things stay how it is.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens have taken plenty of shots on players in the past 4 years. If this draft is light, I think that's 100% fine.
Yeah, and it's just about them hitting these players. I'm looking at it now. We got the 22nd overall pick in the first round. Then we don't have another pick until 86 in the third round.
Yeah, so the draft Chris was talking about was 99 draft. First round, Ravens drafted Chris McAllister, obviously a hit.
Yeah.
Fourth round, they drafted Brandon Stokely and Edwin Mulatalo. And then seventh round, they took a flyer on Anthony Poindexter, who was a well-touted prospect, but had the doctors basically said this guy shouldn't be playing football. Was a good special teams player on the Super Bowl run, but then injuries derailed his career. So good idea, but bad gamble. So yeah, I mean, if they can do that formula for this draft, quality over quantity, let's go.
It's going to be tough. I'm looking at this chasm, and it's hard for me to think that the Ravens are going to be like, yeah, we're picking at 22 and not again until 86. Feels like a lot of players gone off the board that they don't want to let pass by. I feel like they'd rather trade back, and they might still be for the best. But I think if someone falls to 22 that they had in the top, 14, 15 on their board, I think they might snipe and do it and be like, you know what, forget it. We're not trading back. Because we also thought the same thing 2 years ago when they were sat at 31. We're like, that pick's getting traded. There's no way they're going to pick. And then they were like, oh, way, we'll see you later. Like, it's going to be a while until we pick again, but that's okay. We'll see. But definitely not much. And this could change. They definitely could get more draft picks if they trade somebody, or not even like Lamar. I still think Patrick Queen's an interesting guy that might get traded this year. But I also don't think they need to make that move. We'll just see how they play it out. But a lot of flexibility going into this year, from a cap perspective where they can tag Lamar, and also from a player perspective, they have a lot of options I think they can make as far as who to keep and who to let go. Just given the fact that they have a lot of good players, and the core of the team is really solid. So it's just how they want to build around that. Well, that wraps up this episode. Like we said, our next episode will be a nice kind of conversation about all the players that contributed to this year's team. Definitely excited to start writing up all these little vignettes and present them to you guys. It'll be a fun episode, a new idea. We've never done this before, but I think it might become a new staple. So make sure to follow us at One Winning Pod. Maybe by the time our next episode comes out, everyone will leave Twitter. I know I'm barely using it anymore. When they killed third-party apps, I was like, all right, well, I don't know. I know that UK Ravens is on Mastodon, so who knows? Maybe we can make a mass exodus and move Ravens Twitter over to some other instance. But yeah, for now, we're still on Twitter at One Winning Pod. You can email us. That's not going anywhere. onewinningpod@gmail.com. And you can follow us on our YouTube channel at One Winning Pod. We'll see you next week and all throughout the offseason with more Ravens content.
You were about to say go Ravens, weren't you?
I did. How'd you know?